For those of you not on the East Coast, good morning. For those that are, good afternoon, and welcome to the NRC webinar, Best Practice Technical Considerations when Implementing Oracle Cloud. My name is Brian Morrison, and I'm head of the Oracle Solutions Group practice for NRC. I'm joined today by Mark Pemberton from Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center, as well as Mike Doyle from New Resources Consulting. The agenda for today is as follows. We're going to go through introductions. We're going to talk about Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center and New Resources Consulting to give you a little bit of an overview of both those companies. We're going to talk about the data conversion work, specifically the quality, quantity, and the overarching approach, the legacy systems and historical data, interfaces, integrations, and reports. And we are going to end up with a question and answer session, but if you do have any burning questions along the way, please utilize the chat feature in Start Meeting, and we'll pause to address those questions throughout the webinar. So Mike, would you care to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Mike Doyle, Vice President of our Oracle Solutions Group on the technology side. Background in many of the ERP applications that we implement with Oracle, back to PeopleSoft, a little bit on the e-business suite and Oracle Cloud, 20-some years experience with those package applications. And turning it over to Mark.
Good morning. I'm Mark Pemberton. I am the Data Integration Manager here at Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center. A little bit about Wake Forest. We are an academic healthcare system located in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We have a level 1 trauma center with more than 13,000 employees. Our clinical programs have been consistently ranked as among the best in the country by the U.S. News and World Report. And we are the first academic healthcare system in the country to move their on-premise PeopleSoft instances to Oracle Cloud. So we have a little bit of experience so far. Go ahead, Mike.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. And we're certainly proud to be part of that implementation, being the first academic medical center. It's fantastic to be included with that. So a little bit about New Resources Consulting. We're a Oracle Cloud certified implementer. We have over 200 consultants. We actually have a variety of different practice areas. The one we're going to focus in or hone in on today is the Oracle Solutions Group practice. But we also have a clinical path consulting group. We have a management consulting group, and we also have an application development group as well, to name a few. We are an Oracle Platinum Partner. We've been a Platinum Partner for several years now. I mentioned that we are a Cloud Excellence Implementer in the area of talent management, and we're actively pursuing that for the human capital management side, as well as the Cloud ERP side, which is Cloud Financials and Supply Chain Management. In addition, we have our headquarters here in Milwaukee. We have an office in Winston-Salem supporting our flagship account, Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center, as well as in North Carolina. We actually have a number of cloud implementations going on right now, as well as some that have been completed at UW Health and Skanska Manitowoc Company. But at Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center, Cedars-Sinai, HealthStat, City of Atlanta, and the University of Wyoming, to name a few, are some of the active cloud projects that we have. So 8 to 10 of those are still ongoing as we speak. In addition to that, we have a very robust managed services team. So for some of the clients that are out there that are looking to go to Oracle Cloud, we have the ability to support you and backfill some of your resources as you focus on implementing the new solution. So something else to keep in mind from a support perspective, because we all know trying to juggle and do the day-to-day work that you have to do in addition to the project responsibilities can be a bit daunting. So I think we can help out in that area as well. So now I'm going to turn it back to Mike Doyle to talk about the path to Oracle Cloud.
Absolutely. So what we'd like to do is to give a brief snapshot of what Wake Forest had in place, what they currently have for their PeopleSoft applications, and what their drivers were to be able to move them to want to go to the Oracle Cloud platform. In place they have Financials 9.1, HCM 9.1, Within HCM 9.2, this really is more of the ELM package, and Campus Solutions 9.0. As you can see, a number of different modules that were in place. They had multiple applications for HCM and for finance that had been merged together as they had gone through acquisitions. Through all of that work, a lot of customization had been added to the application, and it became a decision point, and a very clear decision point for them as to whether or not they should look to upgrade their 9.1 PeopleSoft applications or look to move those to cloud and follow more of the standardized business practices that the cloud software offers. Within the HCM suite, as you can see, we have the Global Payroll Core Service, the Human Capital, the Fusion Performance Management, Time and Labor Cloud Service, Workforce Compensation Cloud Service, Talent Acquisition Cloud, and Taleo Learn. And this covers off the majority of the HCM and learning management components that they had in place. We do also have a number of ERP modules that we're working to implement, although the ERP project is by design lagging behind the HCM so that it's not necessarily taking away from all the resources all at the same time from both NRC and the client standpoint. So we have a few bullet points of the considerations to look at when moving to Oracle Cloud. And the first few really focus around your data conversion. I'll run through these in more detail, but just going through that bulleted list, we have some data quality, the amount of data history that we'll convert, the data conversion programs that need to be created, what you're going to do for retirement of your systems, and as a part of that as well, what happens with that legacy data. The integrations you currently have in place and how those will be addressed in the future state with Oracle Cloud, as well as the reports that you would require, maybe are custom built today and might be delivered by Oracle in the cloud release, or certain other reporting requirements that may be unique to your business. I would say that one of the largest challenges that we've seen in converting our clients has been the quality of data. And we all would like to think that the data that in our system is as robust as it could possibly be, and going back through the beginning of our implementation, that there have been no issues with any of that data. Well, what we find oftentimes has happened is we've done potentially SQL updates, which could break the referential integrity of our data. And maybe that was just as a part of the initial data load to work around some of the requirements of data entry that aren't required for historical data. Or it could be situations where we've changed control data, maybe changed the date of it, or even changed attributes about that data that didn't trickle down into our transactional data. Or there may also be some optional or free-form data entry that we allowed in the source system, which is now going to be enforced in cloud. And one of the largest areas that we've seen this is with regards to address information. So in the Oracle Cloud, you're typically looking at the address information being validated via Vertex so that you have a postal code, county, and city are all tied together and accurately represented. In the majority of systems that I've seen as a starting point, the county isn't even captured. And for a lot of counties and a lot of postal codes, there is overlap where a single postal code might cover multiple counties, which would require then some data cleanup from perhaps a functional team member to have to do some research and find out in what county does that address actually reside. Another item that we would talk about is the amount of history to convert. And the initial discussions with our clients typically start out as, well, we want to bring forward all of our data. We have it all in our legacy system. Why wouldn't we want to have it all in our cloud system? What we tend to find is that the further back in time that you go, the more of those data issues are uncovered, and the less likely it is to understand why it had occurred. I may not be able to tell you 7 years ago why data was changed via a SQL statement. Maybe in the past year we would have a better recollection or a ticket tracking system that could tell us that. So typically a lot of these issues will line up with the data quality issues that we've discussed earlier. But we can also see new issues being introduced in the standpoint of the scope of data that we're converting. We may only map current values, and we could find that there's 50% more values that historically have been used that we now need to come up with a data map to be able to allow the data to load into the system. And I often like to use an analogy when we talk about the history to convert. Many years ago, I moved from one house into another, and at that time, I had packed up some boxes. I brought those boxes with me to my new house, and the reality is some of those boxes haven't been opened since I moved 5 years ago. In some ways, you can look at your historical data the same way. Are you just bringing boxes of data forward to your new house that you might never look at? And then is the new house really the place that data should be stored? When we do the data conversion, we're going to be writing programs in our source system, and we want to do so in a way where those extracts can be easily recreated. We're going to go through multiple iterations of our data conversion. We will initially put it into a CRP environment or a series of CRP environments to do conference room pilots with our end users. And what often happens during those conference rooms is after the data is reviewed for the first time, changes get made. We say instead of looking at it this way, we want to look at it that way. We don't want to have to rewrite our conversion programs each time. We want to be able to apply specific tweaks to that data instead of having to reinvent the wheel each time. We want to make sure that it's a repeatable process and that we're doing consistent logic for how we're identifying our rows. We'll talk about data or row IDs that are being used in the conversion process, keeping those consistent. And what we typically find is that the source system's native programming language is ultimately the ideal starting point for being able to bring that data forward. We may have customers who are on the call here who might be on EBS, JDE, PeopleSoft, Lawson, probably our most common that we're coming from. And what we find also is if you're a PeopleSoft or an EBS customer looking to move to the cloud, they also have created an integration toolkit for those customers who want to have data that's coexisting. And that toolkit in and of itself can give you a jump start on a lot of what you would need for your conversion program. I would caution that it's not a 100% solution because that is anticipating that you're going to coexist your full suite of data that you have as it exists in PeopleSoft or EBS, and you want that data to reside in cloud the same way. As we talked about in the prior slides, a lot of times we're going to be changing the data history that we're bringing forward, so we'll need to make tweaks to the program to accommodate that. We also may need to address some data quality items, which is where a middleware can also come into play. When we load the data into Oracle Cloud, there are various types of data load programs. The most common one that's being utilized is the HCM data loader, which is a file-based load uploaded to cloud. The import happens within the actual cloud program, and validations will occur online, along with giving you reports as to where there may have been errors that have occurred. On prior releases, this was called their file-based loader, which is also what's used on the ERP side. But we're seeing a transition through each release of the cloud application that more and more of the data entities are being redeveloped to be loaded through the HCM data loader. One of the benefits of this tool is that it allows you to merge data on top of data that's already in the system, so you don't have to worry about if you've already loaded 1,000 job codes, you want to add 100 more. If the data hasn't changed in those other 1,000 job codes, you can run that full file in without fear of having conflicts of data. You'll also see that we've listed two other types of loaders here for the payroll batch loader and the benefits loader, which are true spreadsheet based and will actually create a connection within the spreadsheet to be able to do those data loads. Similarly, the data loads are being enforced as a part of the loads. So if there are errors in the data or there's setup data that doesn't exist, those error messages will be reported back to you to be able to do the resolution. One thing you'll notice we haven't talked about is the ability to do any sort of SQL access and SQL loads of this data into the system. And that is by design. We don't have access to do PL SQL programs or be able to take flat files and write SQL insert statements. That avoids being able to introduce some of those data quality issues, but that means that we now have to enforce that from within what tools we do have available from Oracle Cloud. So some of the things to look at within these data conversion programs is that there may be data changes or data deletes that need to occur. Many of the HDL templates will allow you to delete data in certain circumstances, but there also becomes a point that that data cannot be deleted if it's in use in transactional rows. So as you get into your conference room pilot, you'll create all of your setup data, your job codes, positions, if you use position management, organizations, departments, etc., grades, grade rates, and all of the salary-related information. Many of those can be modified and or deleted. But once you get to the point that you load in your workers or your employees, as we would typically refer to those, that's where you get to a point that that data cannot be easily deleted. And that you need to look at doing a refresh of your environment. We typically will call those a production to test or a test to test. You'll hear the phrases P to P, P to T, or T to T often being used by your implementation partner. And that's really to give you a reset of that environment. And those are some things to consider as you're going through these iterations, that those refreshes do need to be scheduled with Oracle, and typically there's a minimum 3-week lead time in order to be able to have those refreshes scheduled. So as we talk about bringing in certain amounts of data into the system, we also want to look at making sure that we aren't putting ourselves in a situation that we can't retire our legacy system. When we designed the implementation for Wake Forest, we did so in a way that would allow them to retire their PeopleSoft HCM and FSCM applications. We're running on legacy hardware, we're running legacy versions of the application that we don't want to have to worry about keeping in place with regards to any sort of regulatory requirements or legal hold requirements that might be needed for those applications. That brings up a lot of questions. What is the right time to retire that system? Can you do it on day one or day one of your go live? In order to do so, you need to make sure that you have enough data being loaded into that system to account for your reporting needs, as well as those regulatory requirements. And how long does that data have to remain available? And does it have to be in this original source system? Oftentimes from a regulatory or legal reporting requirement, doesn't necessarily have to be in the source system. It just has to be in a facility that can generate those reports. So many times we'll find that we want to bring forth just clean data, and we don't want to bring forth years and years of data that may not be applicable to what we're trying to look for. With Wake Forest, we've elected to bring forth 3 years of our transactional data, but they've been alive on the system for well over 10 years and have multiple iterations of business structures that have been built in the system that we don't want to carry forward. So we will typically do for customers that want to only bring forward a snapshot of their clean data is look at creating an on-premise historical data store to house the data, or potentially store the denormalized data in a format that's easily reportable. For Wake Forest, we actually took both approaches. We have a historical data store for that data, but we also have other pieces of information that's already denormalized, examples being the W-2s have been generated for our legal requirement, and we have those stored into an imaging system that allows for easy retrieval and has the necessary security around it so that the payroll representatives can be able to retrieve that data, but it's not necessarily available to the end users or to others within the organization. And this allows us to be able to have a quicker decommissioning of our legacy system. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mark to talk through our integrations and reports.
Thanks, Mike. So with most PeopleSoft installations, your current system likely has numerous integrations to and from a variety of systems. Most would commonly be the outbound extractions that would be delivered. Maybe it's a nightly process, a batch, so it could be delivered over the network. Maybe you utilize an FTP server for delivery. Similar to the integrations, you might have multiple custom reports that have been created for your environment. The methodology used to create these reports might mirror that of the integrations, having a different format output. Now, when it comes time to develop the integrations and reports in the Oracle Cloud, most are able to be replicated using the new table structures provided in the cloud, with virtually the same output that is seen today. So the variation shouldn't be that much. It's those more complex integrations that might require a middleware product to perform those complex processing logic or even utilize a different delivery method. Now, before any migration work can be done, it is vital to know, understand, and document the current integrations and reports. This can be quite time-consuming to pull this together if it isn't already there. So make sure you have time to do that. Having this will reduce the distraction time during this development process, because it can be quite distracting when you're having to go back and look for details of an existing interface. Some of these key technical aspects are functional requirements. That's why the report or interface is necessary. Who's the business owner? Who do you go to when you have questions? What's the communication protocol? How do you deliver that data to the endpoint? The file and field layouts. What does the data look like? Comma delimited, flat file? And your frequency or schedule. How often is the integration or report generated? Capturing this information up front will help you design and develop these interfaces more efficiently. As you develop, go back one more time, Mike. As you develop this list of integrations and reports, it might be best to throw it into a spreadsheet that will allow you to capture and track these integrations and the work effort. Once this is done, you can produce a roadmap of what it will take to get to the endpoint of having a complete list of developed interfaces. Okay. All right, so as you develop this list of integrations, or maybe we often refer to it as an integration inventory, it might start to become obvious that several of these interfaces might have very similar functional specifications or requirements. Back when they were written, maybe it was a developer who didn't know what had been written in the past, or so you might see some duplicate or very similar interfaces. This is a perfect opportunity to maybe reduce the number of integrations down to using a single data source and producing multiple outputs from that single data source. Through the development process, certain interfaces or reports may use coded values. These coded values could differ from what the source system has versus what the Oracle Cloud may produce. A perfect but rudimentary example is the person gender. One system might use male or female written out, while another one uses the singular M or F. So with these variations, it might be required to use the mapping tables in Oracle Cloud to help with that, producing those crosswalk tables. The thing to note is some of these mapping tables may have already been produced by your data conversion team. So it's vital that you work with the conversion team, as Mike had indicated, to reduce the duplicative work developing these mapping tables. Now, it is likely that most of these integrations and reports will remain that the nightly batch process is delivered via maybe an SFTP process. However, there could be a few that might require additional technologies that could be handled by a middleware product, such as an example that we had. We produced our Crotus punch data that needed to be loaded into HCM time and labor. There was no option to load this in via the HCM data import, so Oracle provided an option to use their Oracle Cloud REST API. This was produced via using our middleware product to convert the comma delimited file from Kronos into the JSON messages and delivered via the REST API. Another example is importing the certifications. Being a healthcare industry, we have a lot of certifications. So in today's world, we maintain those certifications via the direct database connections or data links. Unfortunately, as Mike indicated, we do not have that luxury of having that in Oracle Cloud. So Oracle does provide the use of their HCM import process, and it could be done manually, but we wanted to automate that. Oracle does have the ability to automate the HCM import using SOAP protocol. In this case, not only did we use the HCM import, calling the HCM import via the SOAP protocol, we also used it to perform an extraction using the BI publisher, again using that SOAP protocol. Before we get into lessons learned, I want to pause if there's any questions regarding the data, either the data conversions or interfaces and reports.
Mark, this isn't necessarily a question. I wanted to also just reiterate when you were talking about the integrations and the codes, how that tied in with what the data conversion team was doing. I think it's important to note that Mark and I have been working very closely throughout data conversion and integration. You know, data conversion really is hopefully solidified pretty well by the time integrations start, but having the two teams working together across that whole process is extremely helpful, as well as engaging with the functional SMEs, because what we find oftentimes would happen is there would be an interface that utilized field XYZ that was never accounted for in the conversion, and then the question would come to the conversion team to say, well, where is this field loaded? Ultimately, we can't choose that until we talk to the subject matter experts. So really, all three teams have to work very closely to make sure all of that information is captured and addressed for each one of those tiers. And I think one of the lessons learned that I don't necessarily think we called out here was with that interface inventory that Mark was talking about, going a level deeper and talking about the specific data elements and making sure that those are addressed even as early as the conference room pilot would make the integration development easier and make the conversion easier without having to do a lot of rework.
Thank you, Mike. That's a great point. Okay, so some of our lessons learned. First, please take special considerations when estimating the effort for the data conversion. As Mike indicated, it is quite complex. The first thing is please ensure you have a clear understanding of how the data needs to be built in Oracle Cloud. We were not necessarily naive in thinking that our data was clean, but we didn't realize how dirty it was. So make sure you take enough time to ensure that you've built in that time to perform that necessary cleanup, which could possibly be done either manually or programmatically. And as the data conversion team prepares for a new conversion pass, plan ahead and just as Mike had indicated, to perform this in a new environment. There's core data structures and an employee level data that simply cannot be deleted once it's been loaded. So plan ahead, make sure you have a solid environment strategy, which environment's being loaded, which environment is being tested, which environment is producing build. And as we'd indicated before, interface inventory is vital. It will make the process of migrating much more efficient. But as you review the interfaces and reports that are in your environment today, verify that they still need to be developed. In some cases, we have some interfaces that were still producing data, but the data wasn't being used. So no need to do additional work if it's not necessary. And last but not least, be sure to choose that right partner. Who will set those realistic project estimates for you? Who will have those resources available on site to address those change management and change adoption initiatives? And who's going to facilitate that knowledge transfer? And most of all, who's going to have your best interest? This is your project, so let them help you. As here at Wake Forest, we have fostered a great relationship with NRC and continue to work with them as we make this transition. At this point, we'll open up with a full set of questions that you might have available to us.
Questions from the group on anything that you've seen today thus far? Okay, well, there was one question that came up very similar to what we presented today in this webinar pertaining to integration tools. Not only the tools that we've utilized at Wake Forest, but some of the other tools, Mike, that maybe we've come across at other Oracle Cloud implementations. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think the one that we had mentioned in the presentation, Oracle SOA, the irony of that is, even though Mark and I have mentioned that in our presentation, that's not the tool that we're utilizing at Wake Forest. They have their own middleware integration tool. Mark, actually I'll turn to you and let you describe that tool a little bit. Even though it's similar in case to what Oracle SOA does, it does have its differences that made it a better choice for Wake Forest.
Yes, absolutely. We chose to continue to use our existing middleware product that that we're already familiar with. We've been trained on. We know the functionality and how to utilize it. We didn't see it a good fit to have two middleware products or SOA tools, and we have yet to see any hindrances using our tool versus an Oracle tool or any other tool. So if your product, if you currently have a middleware product, please review what the technology capabilities are and to be able to make that decision. Again, it goes back to what you're familiar with and what staff resources would be required to utilize yet another middleware tool if necessary.
And along with that, for some customers, they find that the Oracle Cloud Integration Cloud service may also be a worthwhile product to pursue. That service comes with canned connectors to connect both to cloud as well as to numerous third-party systems and potentially on-premise systems that you might have, as well as there being a marketplace to be able to procure additional connectors for those that they don't deliver. And then, you know, really would look at the cross-reference of what is available and what you have in use to see, is there a connector that's already available that we can just click and have go into place and take care of that integration for us without us even having to worry about it. In addition to some of those integration tools, we've also utilized even some simple client-type tools. We have some Python programs that have been written to do data scrubbing of the conversion files, as we've talked about, making sure that your data is clean and there's a very rigid format that needs to be followed. The Python tool often can fill in the blanks where necessary. For the vertex lookup, we have the Python actually reviewing a data extract that we've taken from Oracle Cloud of their county zip code lookup, and we'll report out an error file of those that you don't have a county, which then we can specifically address those to say for these, under 5% that need to be manually addressed. We create another mapping file that says utilize this file to say for Mike Doyle, who lives in this cross-county zip code, we're going to actually put zip code A instead of zip code B. And that can help clean up a lot of that information right up front by using nothing more than a quick little program that was written that you use, I call it client-side, but really on-prem, that has been created by your development staff.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Can you expand on the time frame for the effort, resource commitment, and the process you went through to obtain business support for the migration?
Well, why don't we start with the process for business support, because that's really the starting point for this. Brian, I'll let you spearhead that.
Absolutely, yeah. So the first part of that, and Mark touched on this a little bit, is we are partnered, this is NRC partnered with Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center, and because we had a team of folks that were currently supporting their legacy system, which is PeopleSoft Financials, as well as HCM, Campus, Portal, and ELM, it made it pretty easy for us to backfill and support a lot of those types of positions while the Wake Forest team was able to then focus on the implementation of the Oracle Cloud product. So that certainly was a big benefit, and we can certainly do that with the pool of resources we have available, especially if we're familiar with the legacy systems such as PeopleSoft. So as far as the timelines and the scope of the effort, which I think you were alluding to, it's the full suite HCM Oracle Cloud implementation, which includes the talent management portion, includes payroll, so that's certainly the long tent pole, if you will, from a project management perspective. So we are still slated, at least at this point, we were targeting January. I think we pushed that to mid-next year, might even go live with talent, and then the following January go live with payroll and the rest of HCM, along with Oracle Cloud ERP, by the way. So it could be a big bang approach for both of those two pillars, if you will. And I think the second part of the question related to the migration.
Well, and actually even the timeline for the migration, I think the biggest driver that we see for how long this project could take is a combination of how much data are you bringing into your system. If you're looking to start clean, you only want to take current row or top of stack, we often call that. That definitely shortens your window down. We've seen clients go live in as little as 6 months when they want to take top of stack data, and they want to keep their business process very similar to what they're doing today. I've seen timelines go as long as 2 years when you talk about bringing in significant amount of historical data. We also have clients who, in addition to wanting to go live with the Oracle Cloud product, are looking to do complete redesign of how they track their job codes and positions, and maybe changing their grade structures. And a lot of that adds additional complexity to the project, which complexity and timeline oftentimes are very linear. The other half to that, which Mark had talked about on that interface inventory, is getting an understanding of how many interfaces that you need to address as a part of your implementation. And of those that aren't already addressed by something out of the box from Oracle Cloud, what is the complexity of those? And making sure that you have the resource commitment to be able to get those done in whatever windows you're looking to implement. Most customers like to do a calendar year-end implementation because it minimizes them having to do a mid-year payroll conversion. But we also would say if you're looking at maybe starting in April and you have at least a year's worth of work, does it make sense to try to go live in 1 year and maybe put a few additional resources on it to tighten that window up? That probably makes more sense than extending it a whole another year just to go live on a calendar year. So in that case, it may make sense to go mid-year to be able to make sure that you can fit all of the work in the necessary time and not have to wait too long to put your product in. The last thing you want to do is to start a large initiative for a company and say, we're starting this, but we're not going live for 2 years. Something like cloud, you want to make sure that you're able to get onto it as soon as possible. And one of the big advantages I see of that is your application is continually being updated, and you're having the best of what is being available in the product available to you. Anybody who's a on-prem PeopleSoft or EBS customer, any of the other applications, understands the complexity of putting in your updates time and time again. And oftentimes during an implementation, those updates would stop. Maybe even for customers who are live, those updates stop, and you only see them being regulatory updates going in. The reason I bring that up, though, is on a longer-term project, you're likely looking at 2 updates that are going to happen within your cloud system as well that you need to make sure you're accounting for within your testing cycles and even your conversion cycles, because there's things that may change that could impact how you do your conversions, how you do your integrations, as well as how you do your online transacting.
Great point. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name of the individual or what company they were with, but hopefully we answered the question. But if you're still with us, could you let us know?
Yeah, this is Josh Danny from Temple University Health System.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh. Did we answer the question, or was there a follow-up question that you had?
No, partially. I know that some of the answers are difficult, but I think that was sufficient. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other questions from the group? Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for joining the webinar today. We appreciate the questions and you listening in. And depending on where you're at, to Mike's point, in your search for implementing Oracle Cloud Solution or just a SaaS solution in general, I think we certainly can help. Whether it's the assessment phase or you're going through an Oracle Cloud Planning or looking at some of the other solutions out there, we absolutely can provide some assistance. If you've already decided on a software and you're looking at implementing and you're looking for supplemental help or us to lead it or a combination thereof, I absolutely think we can assist. And as I mentioned a couple different times, if you're looking for some backfill of resources from a support perspective, I believe we can assist in that endeavor as well. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. And here's our contact. If you don't have it, info@nrconsults.com and the main number to our headquarters here in Milwaukee. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.